Good morning, everyone. This is Carolyn Ward with the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, and welcome to this edition of the Insider's Report, where we're going to explore the Parkway's photo archives. I'm joined today by Kat Connolly, and she's going to give us a behind-the-scenes view of what it's like to go through the photo archives to let you be able to do that on your own. It's going to be quite the journey this morning, and we're really excited. So thank you again for joining us. If you move your mouse over your screen, you'll see a little Q&A down at the bottom. If you would like to submit a question, we will try to answer as many of those as we can during the presentation. And at the end, we'll take a little bit of time to answer some of those live. So once again, if you have a question about today's presentation, please feel free to submit it in the Q&A at the bottom. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us here today because we're going to get to see one of the projects that you have helped made possible. So we helped fund a project to take some of the photo archives that exist at the Blue Ridge Parkway that have been done in digitizing projects in the past, and you'll hear a little bit more about that during today's presentation, and make them available for the public, for you to be able to peruse some of the historic archives, some of the maps and some of the documents that help make the Blue Ridge Parkway experience what it is, captured in time and space. So it's going to be a really exciting journey. And we're joined today by the intern that you helped fund, Kat Connolly. She worked on the project as the digital archivist for the Blue Ridge Parkway. So she helped digitize a lot of the images, some of the new ones, and she helped make them accessible in a way that you're going to see today so that you can actually go in and search the database yourself to find some of these images. It's a great public access opportunity for folks to be able to get to some of these images that previously were harder to access. So Kat Connolly currently works as the Visual Information Specialist at Acadia National Park, and she's worked in the field of interpretation and media for the past 2 years at various national parks across the country. So without any further ado, I'd like you all to help me welcome Kat Connolly.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that introduction. It made me sound very important. And I wish I had as beautiful of a background with mountains as she did, but unfortunately, you'll have to look at my kitchen and living room for now. So I am Kat Connolly. I am currently the Visual Information Specialist at Acadia National Park in Maine. And so I'm going to take you guys through a bit of a 101 guide as to how to use NPGallery, which is where the Blue Ridge Parkway digital assets are placed right now for everyone to use. So what are you going to see when you go onto NPGallery? So here are just a few examples of some of the images that were digitized. There is a total of actually 7,900 assets that are currently on NPGallery under the Blue Ridge Parkway collections. And so they span across many decades. It starts all the way back to the construction era when the Parkway was first built in all the different sections across Virginia and North Carolina, all the way until contemporary images that were taken now. So here are just a few examples from places all across the Parkway. An example of a construction photo. Flat Top Manor at the Moses H. Cone Memorial Park. Some campground images from Downton Park. So what is NPGallery? Because I'm assuming that most of you on the call today had not heard about it until you read the description for the webinar. So NPGallery is a digital asset management system. So if we break that down, that just means it's a place for the public and for parks to put photos, documents, maps, files, audio, video, all different sorts of things, and it's a place where you can go and find them. So it's a way to search for these park collections by different categories that are determined by each park. So there can be different subject areas, places, time periods, a lot of different ways to be able to look through a massive collection that a park might put up onto NPGallery. So when you go to the landing page for the Blue Ridge Parkway, it's going to look like this. So we have a beautiful photo at the top, so you'll know that you're on the correct page. And then we're on a landing page that has the Discover and Explore digital assets. And so later on in the presentation, we will go through how you would use the functions on the landing page in order to find the images. So as Carolyn noted earlier, the project with NPGallery and my internship at the Blue Ridge Parkway last fall and winter was sort of the second step after work that had been done previously by Ann Mitchell-Wisnat with Driving Through Time. And so I just want to recognize that there's a few differences between the projects, but there is also overlap. Driving Through Time has a lot of historical context, and it goes through different images from the Blue Ridge Parkway archives in more of a storytelling way. And there's also interactive maps where you can click through and look at photos based on where they are. NPGallery, which we'll be focusing on today, is more of what I said, a digital asset management system, and it has both contemporary and historic images. And the reason that we moved towards it at the Blue Ridge Parkway is because it was an NPS.gov website as well that we could go in and edit if we needed to make changes and add new assets and things like that. So the overlap is clearly that they both contain historic photographs from the Blue Ridge Parkway archives, and they're just two different ways to be able to look at what's in those collections. So why is NPGallery useful? So it's a place to search for thousands of Blue Ridge Parkway digital assets. Another thing is there's multiple file sizes that can be downloaded. Everything from the full high resolution scan to smaller thumbnails if you really just wanted to look at it pretty small or share it with others. And it's a great research tool, not just for park staff, but also for students who are working on projects locally, historians, contractors who might be placed with a rehabilitation project on a building and want to reference old photos of that. So those sorts of things. So where do we find NPGallery? So luckily NPGallery is something that we can look at not being on a government computer. So you can search on a desktop or on your phone or tablet, and you can find the website. So if you're interested in looking at all of the different NPGallery park units, you would need to go to the link in the middle. That'll bring you to a very general landing page where you can search across every park unit in the National Park Service. And if you have loads of time and want to go down, a trip to memory lane across everything, that's where you would go. If you're specifically going to start looking through the Blue Ridge Parkway collections, then you're going to want to go to the bottom link, which contains what we call the park code, so the BLRI. So how do we search when we're, on the landing page and we've gotten there, really excited to just dive right in? So there's a few different ways. We can start with the box that you saw at the top on the former landing page, which is a keywords and search terms box. Or you can use the drop-down menus that were established by myself and the Division of Resource Management team, and we discussed how is the best way to break down what's in the collection. So you can search from the historic images and maps and drawings and contemporary images. They would be under collection. There's also just construction era photos, if that's what you'd like to look at. Then milepost range, which are broken down by every 20 mileposts. Points of interest all across the parkway, from the very tippy top of Virginia all the way to where it meets the Great Smoky Mountains. And then other categories, just sort of a general bucket of different kinds of topics in which some of these photographs fell into. So we're going to go through an example Hold on one second. Let me see if I can share this video. Hold on. I apologize. It was embedded in the presentation. Well, we do have a backup version of the video. Hold on one second. All right, so keyword and phrase box, and then all these different drop downs. So we have collections, states, construction, points of interest, all other categories, mileposts, districts, and sections. Now we're gonna start with an example, and that will be for Doughton Park. So if we go into Doughton Park, we can see that there's 245 results. So a decent amount of images that have all been tagged, and you can notice that there's also the maps and drawings included since we've just searched by the location. And so you can click through and see all different things here. Now, if we go back to the landing page, we can search by a different category, and this time, let's go under construction, and we can search for all of the examples of viaducts. So 208 results, and as you can see, there's a lot of construction photos in here with their titles, and then also images which are located on photo cards. That is the difference between when you see them as a full-size image or they're on one of those manila-looking cards. Now, under milepost range, you can see how they're by every 20 miles. And let's say that you wanted to see all the images as close to where the parkway meets the Great Smoky Mountains. So now you can see that there's going to be all different images from those last 20 miles of the Blue Ridge Parkway, from construction to viewpoints, traffic, all different kinds of things. So there's a lot of different titles, and you're able to just kind of poke through and see what sparks your interest. So now I'm going to show you how we can make either a broader search or a more narrow search. So basically, you're going to use two drop downs to create a broader search. So if we decided to use, let's say, waterfall from the drop down, since there's a lot of categories that we can choose from. And then we're going to type in Virginia. Now, as you can see, there's only 3 assets. And when we think of the thousands that are on here, that's very, very narrow. So what that means is it only came up with 3 photos based on that search. Now, if we go back and we choose waterfall and Virginia from a dropdown, we'll have a very different result. Now this came up with 4,100 results. So you're probably thinking, how come there was 3 and now there's 4,100? Essentially, look at the fact that there's an or between the 2 keywords. Versus before, when we just chose waterfall and Virginia, that's when we had an and. So there's way less results that only have that. Now we're gonna go look at one of my favorite images. So if we search for campfire, and we're going to break down a little bit more into the search functions, there's about 9 results. And if you click in, this is what an image will look like. So you'll see the title, the location, the photographer, and you can poke through and go to previous and next and different options. And then if you'd want to learn even more, you can zoom in on the image and you can see the original TIFF file size, which is the large uncompressed one, or smaller downloadable versions, and then all of this extra metadata: title, publisher, copyright, photographer, keywords, location, when it was taken. Everything you could possibly need to know about this image is going to be under that image information. So now we will go back to our presentation. And start again. So what do we need to remember about those search functions? If we want to have more images, then we are going to want to do 2 drop-down values. You can choose from any of the different drop-downs, and that will give you broader results. Versus if you want less images, if you're pretty knowledgeable of the Blue Ridge Parkway and it's going to be a specific search that you're doing, you're going to want to use the search box and a drop-down value in order to get a more narrow result. So beyond the historic photographs, what do we have on NPGallery? As you could kind of see, there are a few different kinds of assets besides the historic photographs. There are parkway land use maps, which are often called plums. And those are drawings of the construction of the parkway that people really like to look at. They're very large files, but you can poke around and download them if you'd like, and they are in this form of PDFs. And they're from section 1A all the way at the top, all the way to the bottom. And so they're broken up by sections. There's also what we call the Historic American Building Survey and Historic American Engineering Record Drawings, or HABS hair drawings. I'm a very big fan of these. They're very poster looking. And so they're on there as well. And they kind of highlight different areas of the parkway and then different elements of the parkway, whether it's tunnels, overlooks, bridges, signs, all different things. And lastly, we have the contemporary image collection. So that's going to be modern photos, and we had a volunteer who donated a very large collection of images to us, and we hope that the Parkway staff and other photographers will be able to contribute to that in the future. So this is an example of all the different plums that are on there, and as you can see, they all show different construction and the planning of the parkway. And does anyone have any questions? I think we're going to move back to Carolyn for the Q&A.
All right, Kat, thank you so much. It's so interesting to take a look back in time, and it reminds me of old photo albums we had as a kid, and everything is on my iPhone now, and to see things up on a screen like this and know that we all have access to these is really exciting. I did want to ask a clarification question. So you talked about how people can go on here and look at any park. They could go to Yellowstone or somewhere else in any park unit and go to NPGallery and see images from that park. And I know you mentioned that the parkway was, when you go looking for a park, was BLRI. And just to clarify for everyone, for most parks in the system, what that is the first 2 letters of the first 2 names of each national park. So BLRI is Blue Ridge. And is that the case for how that nomenclature works?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked that. It's a little bit jargony when I think about it. So yes, if a park is one word, Acadia, Yosemite, Yellowstone, it is the first 4 letters of that word. But if a park is any more than one word, Blue Ridge Parkway or Cape Cod National Seashore, it's the first two letters. That is pretty consistent across the entire National Park Service. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, that is the format that we stick with.
Okay, fabulous. And just to remind everybody, we are recording this, and so we'll be sending it out to everyone because I know there were a lot of links and things that people might want to be able to access. So this should be coming out to you tomorrow or the following day if you had signed up for this, and we'll make it available on our website. So we had a question that was submitted. Can anyone use the images that you find on this resource at NPGallery? Are they copyright protected? What if I wanted to use them in a presentation or in a news story I was writing?
Sure. So that is a great question. All of the pictures that ended up going up are in the public domain. That was a decision that we made when going through. If there were anything that was a little bit questionable in terms of its copyright status, it did not go up on NPGallery. We do ask, though, the National Park Service does, and this is for assets across NPGallery, not just Blue Ridge Parkway ones, that there is a credit given. And so underneath where you see that image information box that I zoomed in on, that's where it will say who the photographer was. And we ask that you put courtesy National Park Service, Blue Ridge Parkway as just a general reference when using them. But yes, they can be used in a presentation, a project, anything like that.
Oh, fabulous. And so you mentioned, I think early on in the presentation, that there were different sizes of the images. And so when I pull up the image, does it give me those options for which size to download?
Yes, so underneath the image information, again, there is a list right underneath. And so that's gonna have the original and then a bunch of different compressed versions. Now I'm gonna suggest that if you are looking at an image where it's the full size, like for example, this landing question page, where it's already cropped in the full image, then you can download any size. But if you're gonna be downloading one that's on a photo card, I would download the largest version and then crop it from there, because then you'll get the highest resolution of just the photo, depending on what you're trying to use it for.
Okay, and a follow-up question to that. I think some of the plum maps and some of the other images that one might go to download are exceptionally large. Are there any concerns that one should look out for when you hit original?
So yes, I would definitely check how large they are. The plums are probably the largest of all of them. It might take, and I would say that the note is if it's taking a while to download, you might want to just go check back as to which one you clicked. But yes, the plums are going to be the largest, just as a disclaimer. But most of the photos, they should take only, up to probably 30 seconds to download, depending on how large they are.
Okay, great. And then I think we have time for just a couple more questions. Somebody wants to know what, and I wanted to know this as well, what were your favorite historic images as you worked through this project?
Sure. So this one that we have on the screen right now is just because it's a female ranger giving a little presentation. And before I got into visual information and working in the digital archives, I was doing more visitor interpretation tours sort of thing. So it brought me back to that a little bit. But also the campfire one that we use as an example, that's one of my favorites just because it's incredibly challenging to take night photos like that. And so that was one of the few that we have in the entire collection that are taken at night. But then the other ones, I'm a big fan of VW buses. And so there was one of a superintendent at I think they were celebrating some anniversary of the Parkway, and he was greeting visitors as they drove in. And so it was a VW bus and the superintendent walking up in uniform, and that was one of my favorites. I had it printed at my desk. So.
And then we've got a couple questions that are somewhat related. So I'll ask each piece of each one. So if I have historic images, or as you mentioned, that there are current imagery that is available in the archives, can I submit that? How do are you continuing to build the archive?
Sure. That is actually a question probably beyond my knowledge. I would default any historic images that someone might have to be sent to the museum curator. And her name is Jackie Holt. She was my supervisor at Blue Ridge Parkway, and she was tremendous guidance through this entire project and my mentor there. And so I would send any, inquiries about something that you may have that you want to contribute to the archives. I would send them to her.
And one of the issues about that is that, which was clear on a lot of the imagery that you showed today, is that there has to be information about that historic image, exactly where it was and the context. And so it's not just any photo I might have in my photo album of the Parkway from way back when, but there actually needs to be content so that they can validate where it was. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, and as we saw with the examples at the beginning of the presentation, I made sure to select ones to show you guys that have a photographer listed. There are plenty of them with the photographer is unknown. The date is unknown. The location is unknown because it just doesn't have enough context for us to be able to identify those things. So it is really important if we can have as much information and what we call metadata about the images as possible. That's quite beneficial.
Right. And then one more question, and someone had asked about showing the links again. And once again, we're gonna have this available recorded, so you'll be able to get a copy of all those links. But Kat, just while we're finishing up the presentation, if you wanna put that slide up that has those links for the folks that might not wanna wait till tomorrow to be able to go play and explore.
Sure.
We'll put that back up on the screen for a couple seconds. And the last question, do you know if there's any interest, not just at the Parkway, but across MP, across the National Park Service, of adding other resources to NPGallery, like virtual reality or 3D? There's all kinds of new ways, of course, video of capturing things that are along the national parks. Do you know if they're expanding that at all?
I believe they are. I know that there's a few limitations on what can be uploaded onto NPGallery right now, but I do know that in the example of Acadia, we're putting up contemporary albums all the time, and also we'll be putting video files up here. There are a lot of audio files that are also going up, sometimes oral histories or sounds, natural soundscapes at certain parks that people can go and listen to, bird calls or different examples of wildlife. And so I think that's what they're kind of moving towards right now. I do know that video files can lag a bit. It's just they're usually quite large. But I think they are moving towards making it really the large digital asset management system for all the parks to be able to put their assets there and then pull from that, whether they put it on the website or for other, interpretive resources.
Fabulous. And we had one that was just submitted, and we have a couple seconds. Do you know if there were any former presidents that were included in the photo archive for the Parkway?
I think there was a former first lady, and I cannot be quoted on this, but I don't think that there were any photos with presidents.
Well, and that will give our listeners an opportunity to
go search.
To go search the archive and see what they can find. And so, Kat, once again, I'd like to thank you so much. Thank you for the work on this project. It is a terrific resource that all of us will be able to use into the future to go take a trip down memory lane, and then think about the pictures we're taking today and the memories that we're making now that may end up in an archive like this one day as well. I know seeing those old cars was quite the treat, and in 50 years, they'll be doing that the same for what we're driving today. So thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Insiders Report to go on a little virtual tour of NPGallery for the Blue Ridge Parkway. Thank you again, and go out, be safe, explore the Parkway, and take some images and build your own archives. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.